Facebook share, Twitter share. Click here to read the press release in Russian. The conclusions of the Schmid report, on both factual and legal aspects, confirmed the systemic manipulation of the anti-doping rules and system in Russia, through the disappearing positive methodology and during the Olympic Winter Games Sochi 2014, as well as the various levels of administrative, legal and contractual responsibility, resulting from the failure to respect the respective obligations of the various entities involved. As a consequence, the Schmid Commission recommended to the IOC to take the appropriate measures that should be strong enough to effectively sanction the existence of a systemic manipulation of the anti-doping rules and system in Russia, as well as the legal responsibility of the various entities involved, i.e., including uniform, flag and anthem, while protecting the rights of the individual Russian clean athletes, and to take into consideration the multiple costs incurred by the two IOC DCs, in particular those linked to the investigations, the various expertise and the reanalysis of the samples of the Olympic Games. After discussing and approving the Schmid report, the IOC took the following decision: to suspend the Russian Olympic Committee ROC with immediate effect. To invite individual Russian athletes under strict conditions see below to the Olympic Winter Games Pyeongchang 2018. These invited athletes will participate, be it in individual or team competitions, under the name Olympic Athlete from Russia, or they will compete with a uniform bearing this name and under the Olympic flag. The Olympic anthem will be played in any ceremony, not to accredit any official from the Russian Ministry of Sport for the Olympic Winter Games Pyeongchang 2018. To exclude the then Minister of Sport, Mr. Vitaly Mutko, and his then Deputy Minister, Mr. Yuri Nagorny KH, from any participation in all future Olympic Games. To withdraw Mr. Dmitry Chernyshenko, the former CEO of the Organizing Committee Sochi 2014, from the Coordination Commission Beijing 2022. To suspend ROC President Alexander Zhukov as an IOC member, given that his membership is linked to his position as ROC President. The IOC reserves the right to take measures against and sanction other individuals implicated in the system. The ROC to reimburse the costs incurred by the IOC on the investigations and to contribute to the establishment of the Independent Testing Authority (ITA) for the total sum of $15 million to build the capacity and integrity of the global anti-doping system. The IOC may partially or why lift the suspension of the ROC from the commencement of the closing ceremony of the Olympic Winter Games Pyeongchang 2018, provided these decisions are why respected and implemented by the ROC and by the invited athletes and officials. The IOC will issue operational guidelines for the implementation of these decisions. How the athletes will be chosen to invite individual Russian athletes to the Olympic Winter Games Pyeongchang 2018. According to the following guidelines, the invitation list will be determined, at its absolute discretion, by a panel chaired by Valery Fornarin, chair of the ITA. The panel will include members of the Pre-Games Testing Task Force, one appointed by WADA, one by the DFSU and one by the IOC, Dr. Richard Budget. This panel will be guided in its decisions by the following principles. It can only consider athletes who have qualified according to the qualification standards of their respective sport. Athletes must be considered clean to the satisfaction of this panel. Athletes must not have been disqualified or declared ineligible for any anti-doping rule violation. Athletes must have undergone all the pre-games targeted tests recommended by the Pre-Games Testing Task Force. Athletes must have undergone any other testing requirements specified by the panel to ensure a level playing field. The IOC, at its absolute discretion, will ultimately determine the athletes to be invited from the list. These invited athletes will participate, be it in individual or team competitions, in the Olympic Winter Games Pyeongchang 2018 under the name Olympic Athlete from Russia, or they will compete with a uniform bearing this name and under the Olympic flag. The Olympic anthem will be played in any ceremony. These invited athletes will enjoy the same technical and logistical support as any other Olympic athlete. The panel, at its absolute discretion, will determine an invitation list for support staff and officials. This panel will be guided in its decisions by the following principles. No member of the leadership of the Russian Olympic team at the Olympic Winter Games Sochi 2014 can be included on the invitation list. No coach or medical doctor whose athlete has been found to have committed an anti-doping rule violation can be included on the invitation list. All coaches and medical doctors included on the invitation list must sign a declaration to this effect. Any other requirement considered necessary to protect the integrity of the Olympic Games. The IOC, at its absolute discretion, will ultimately determine the support staff and officials to be invited from the list. IOC President Thomas Bach said this was an unprecedented attack on the integrity of the Olympic Games and sport. The IOC, after following due process, has issued proportional sanctions for the systemic manipulation while protecting the clean athletes. This should draw a line under this damaging episode and serve as a catalyst for a more effective anti-doping system led by WADA. He continued, as an athlete myself, I feel very sorry for all the clean athletes from all NOCs who are suffering from this manipulation. Working with the IOC Athletes Commission, we will now look for opportunities to make up for the moments they have missed on the finish line or on the podium. Decision of the IOC report of the Schmid Commission. The International Olympic Committee is a not-for-profit independent international organization made up of volunteers, which is committed to building a better world through sport. It redistributes more than 90% of its income to the wider sporting movement, which means that every day the equivalent of $3.4 million goes to help athletes and sports organizations at all levels around the world. For more information, please contact the IOC Media Relations Team, telephone 4121-621-6000, via email pressoffice@olympic.org, or visit our website at www.olympic.org. Broadcast quality footage. The IOC Newsroom, http://newsroom.com. Videos, YouTube, www.youtube.com. IOC Media Photos. For an extensive selection of photos available shortly after each event, please follow us on Flickr. To request archive photos and footage, please contact our images team at images@olympic.org. Social media. For up to the minute information on the IOC and regular updates, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube.